Tanisha's mop glided across the polished marble floor of the Bellmore Grand Hotel in downtown Chicago when her phone buzzed. Rule number 1. No phones on duty. Especially not for janitorial staff. Manager Thompson made that crystal clear. But this number was different. It was the University of Amsterdam. Her heart skipped. After 6 failed scholarship attempts for a master's in linguistics, this call could change her life. She ducked behind a pillar. Pressed, answer. Tanisha Rivers? Came a voice, in perfect Dutch. Without missing a beat, she replied fluently, her accent, her cadence, flawless. As she explained in Dutch about a missing motivation letter, the lobby grew strangely quiet. She looked up. Standing just 10 feet away was Douglas Harrington, the Billionaire hotel owner, watching her. Stunned. Beside him, Thompson looked ready to explode. Tanisha ended the call quickly. Ik bel je later terug. She whispered. Rivers, my office. Now. The walk to the basement felt like a mile. Her coworkers stared, some smirking, others wide-eyed. She wasn't just in trouble. She had just become very visible. And that moment, one phone call, one language, would unravel everything. Part 1. Invisible Rules. Tanisha sat stiffly in the cold metal chair across from Manager Thompson in the staff office, buried 3 floors below the glittering chandeliers and piano music of the Bellmore Grand's lobby. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, but it was Thompson's voice that grated worse. You know the rules, Rivers, he snapped, not even looking up from his desk. No personal calls during your shift, especially not in the lobby. And what language were you even speaking? Dutch, Tanisha replied, voice steady. Dutch? He scoffed, finally meeting her eyes. Well, I don't care if it was Martian. You made a scene, right in front of Mr. Harrington. Tanisha clenched her jaw. She wanted to scream, to say what everyone knew but never dared to voice. The front desk girls answered personal calls all the time. No one ever said a word, because they were white, and because they smiled pretty for guests. But Tanisha, a black woman in a janitor's uniform speaking a foreign language? That was a scene. Thompson continued, I'm assigning you to the convention center bathrooms. Nights. 3 months. Tanisha's heart sank. That assignment wasn't just harder, it was humiliating. Cleaning after business banquets, corporate cocktail parties, scrubbing double shifts with no overtime. The hotel's version of solitary confinement. You should be grateful I'm not writing you up, he added flatly. She stood up without a word. Grateful? She had a 4.0 GPA in linguistics from Spelman College. She was fluent in Dutch, Mandarin, Spanish, and French. She had applied to over 30 jobs in translation and guest relations, including 12 right here at Bellmore Grand. Never once heard back. As she walked the narrow hallway back toward the staff locker rooms, she passed by framed posters plastered with the hotel's slogan, Diversity is our strength. She almost laughed. 6 years of mopping floors with a degree in hand. 6 years of guests walking past her like she didn't exist. 6 years of biting her tongue every time Thompson called her, girl, or asked if she really understood English. That night, back at her tiny apartment on the south side, she sat on the edge of her twin bed and stared at her framed diploma. She had worked 2 jobs to put herself through college. She'd written papers in 3 languages, earned certification in intercultural communication, and yet, she was being punished for answering a phone call. Not because it broke a rule, but because it broke expectations. Because in that marble lobby, for 10 seconds, she didn't look like what they expected a janitor to look like. She looked like someone who didn't belong on her knees. Part 2. The Invitation. The next morning, Tanisha showed up early for her shift at the Bellmore Grand. Her eyes were puffy, but her uniform was pressed. Her curls pulled into a neat bun. No matter how defeated she felt inside, she wouldn't let them see her crack. She grabbed her cleaning cart and headed toward the service elevator. The convention center was on the far end of the property, 4 ballrooms, 6 restrooms, and a nightmare schedule. But before she could even hit the button, the front desk phone rang. Tanisha Rivers, please report to Human Resources. Immediately, the head receptionist called out. Tanisha froze. HR? Panic twisted in her stomach. Was Thompson actually writing her up after all? Was she being fired? She wiped her hands on her apron and made her way to the top floor. This was uncharted territory, the executive level. Polished wood walls, private elevators, plush carpet that muffled every step. The kind of place someone like her wasn't meant to be seen. A woman in a sleek blue suit greeted her outside hour. "Mr. Harrington would like to see you in his office," she said. Tanisha blinked. "Me?" The woman nodded. "Follow me." The walk to Douglas Harrington's office felt like a scene out of someone else's life. The billionaire hotel mogul, sharp jawline, crisp gray suit, and eyes that missed nothing, was sitting at a desk bigger than her entire kitchen. A floor-to-ceiling window behind him revealed a postcard view of Lake Michigan. "Miss Rivers," he greeted without looking up. "Please, have a seat." Tanisha sat, clutching her hands tightly in her lap. He finally looked at her. "Dutch, French, Spanish, Mandarin, and conversational Korean?" She blinked again. "Yes, sir. I read your resume," he continued. "I had HR pull your file last night." Tanisha's mouth went dry. "My assistant counted 12 internal transfer requests you've made in 6 years. All denied." He leaned back in his chair. "By Thompson and our director of operations, Mr. Whitaker." Her heart pounded. This couldn't be real. "Out of curiosity," he said, tapping his pen, "why hasn't someone with your background been moved into international guest services?" Tanisha stared at him, then answered honestly, "I don't know. I applied. I followed protocol. I kept my head down. And yet," he said calmly, "you were scrubbing floors while we paid $50 to freelance translators who don't know the difference between simplified and traditional Chinese." He stood, walked over to a table, and picked up a folder. "This weekend, we're hosting a trade conference with delegates from Beijing and Rotterdam. I need someone who understands the languages and the cultural nuance." He handed her the folder. "I want you to be our temporary international liaison for this event. Pay is $5 a week. Starting today." Tanisha's breath caught. She couldn't move. "I know this is sudden," he added, "but I don't believe in letting talent rot behind a mop handle. I believe in results, and I suspect you're going to deliver." She opened the folder slowly. Inside were documents, floor plans, name lists, and an official staff badge with her name and the new title. She looked up. "Why me?" Douglas Harrington gave a small smile. "Because I heard you speak Dutch like a native. Because you're overqualified. And because something in this company smells off. You're the first person who's made me question what else I've missed." Tanisha nodded slowly. For the first time in years, someone had seen her. Not her uniform, not her job title, but her. As she left his office with the folder pressed to her chest, she passed by Thompson in the executive hallway. The shock on his face was worth every miserable shift she'd ever worked. She smiled politely. "Morning, Mr. Thompson." He looked like he'd seen a ghost. But Tanisha didn't stop. She kept walking, toward something entirely new. "And now, I have to ask you something. If you're still listening to Tanisha's story, if your heart is pounding just like hers, comment the number 1 below. Just so I know you're here with me. Because what's coming next? It's going to change everything." Part 3. The Unseen Strings. Tanisha's heels clicked softly on the marble as she stepped into the VIP conference suite. Gone was the janitor's uniform. She now wore a sleek navy blue blazer. A laminated badge clipped to her lapel. International Liaison, Tanisha Rivers. It still didn't feel real. She had spent the past 12 hours studying the event schedule, memorizing names, and reviewing all documents related to the conference. But what caught her attention was the Mandarin translation packet for the keynote speech. Something was off. The phrasing was too literal, too robotic. Worse, some terms were borderline disrespectful in a corporate Chinese context. One phrase, intended to express mutual opportunity, had been translated as shared vulnerability. A mistake like that could turn negotiations cold. Tanisha opened her laptop and began reworking the translations line by line, referencing her intercultural communication notes from college. As she edited, someone stood silently in the doorway. It was Douglas Harrington. "You caught it," he said simply, walking in. "I was hoping you would." Tanisha stood. "Sir, this isn't just inaccurate, it's dangerous. These materials could offend our Chinese partners." "Who approved this?" "Director Whitaker," he said. "He assured me his niece, Ashley Whitaker, handled all Mandarin translations. Certified, supposedly. Tanisha raised an eyebrow. Did anyone actually check her credentials? Harrington shook his head. Apparently not. She came highly recommended. Tanisha opened the original file on the big screen. This sentence, she pointed, uses a term reserved for subordinates. In a negotiation. That's offensive. This one confuses the word for investor with lender, a huge distinction in Chinese. Harrington's jaw tightened. And the Dutch translations aren't much better. She continued. Literal phrasing. No cultural tone. It sounds like someone ran it through Google Translate. He turned to her. Tanisha, how far back do these errors go? I don't know, she admitted, but I have a feeling this isn't the first time they've been used. They exchanged a knowing look. I want a full audit, Harrington said. Find everything. And if you can connect the dots, who's being paid? How much? When? I'll back you. That night, Tanisha stayed at the hotel late. With help from Zoe, a recruitment analyst in our. She combed through past invoices, translator contracts, and internal emails. What they found chilled her. Ashley Whitaker's language services company had been billing Belmore Grand for over 3 years, at triple market rate. Her credentials were fabricated. Worse. Dozens of internal transfer requests from bilingual staff, mostly Black and Latino employees, had been systematically denied by Whitaker and Thompson. Talent was ignored while money flowed to nepotism. This isn't incompetence, Zoe whispered. It's a system. The next morning, the conference began. Tanisha floated between rooms, switching effortlessly from Dutch to Mandarin, easing conversations, translating subtle cues, and preventing misunderstandings before they happened. Delegates were impressed, not just with her language skills, but her cultural fluency. That afternoon, Whitaker approached her with a tight-lipped smile. Miss Rivers, he said, I must say, you're performing above expectations. Tanisha met his gaze calmly. Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. It's impressive how far one can go when someone actually looks at your resume. His smile faltered. Later that day, Harrington gathered the entire executive team in the conference hall. Delegates were invited to observe, under the guise of celebrating a successful collaboration. But Harrington had other plans. Today, he said, stepping onto the small stage beside Tanisha, we're not just celebrating international partnerships. We're confronting a painful truth inside our own walls. He gestured to the screen behind him. It lit up with slides, spreadsheets of inflated payments, email chains denying qualified applicants, and side-by-side examples of translation errors. Gasps rippled through the crowd. For years, Harrington continued, this hotel has quietly silenced talent while rewarding nepotism. That changes today. He turned to Tanisha. Miss Rivers exposed a pattern of fraud and discrimination that went unchecked far too long. Because of her, we now know how many voices were ignored, how many doors were shut before they could even knock. He looked back at the stunned executives. Director Whitaker, you're terminated effective immediately. Ashley Whitaker's contract is void. Legal action is pending. The room fell into stunned silence. Then came a slow, growing applause from the back of the room. The cleaning staff, maintenance crew, kitchen workers. For the first time, someone had fought and won for them. Tanisha didn't smile out of pride. She smiled out of justice. She had spoken up, and this time, someone had listened. Part 4. More than a title. The echo of applause still lingered in the air as Tanisha stepped down from the small stage. Her hands trembling slightly. The conference room was buzzing. Delegates whispering in multiple languages. Employees blinking back tears. And even the stoic kitchen staff standing straighter than usual. For a moment, Tanisha couldn't breathe. Douglas Harrington met her halfway and placed a hand on her shoulder. You did more than fix a translation, he said. You changed a culture. Her eyes welled, but she held her composure. She didn't want this moment to be about tears. She wanted it to be about truth. Backstage, a flurry of employees surrounded her, housekeepers, bellmen, even the shy dishwasher from the staff cafeteria. Some simply nodded, others hugged her quickly and whispered, "Thank you, for all of us." And then, Elizabeth Park, the longest-serving concierge at the Belmore Grand, walked up and handed her a small velvet box. "This was supposed to go to our international director last year," she said with a knowing smile. But I think it belongs to you. Inside was a gold nameplate, engraved with Tanisha Rivers, Director of Global Communications. Tanisha blinked. I didn't know there was a position. There wasn't, Harrington chimed in. But there is now, and it's yours, permanently. The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was warm, earnest, real. Later that evening, Tanisha found herself in the executive elevator once again. Only this time, she wasn't headed for punishment or an interrogation. She was on her way to her new office on the 28th floor. When the doors opened, she stepped into a space that looked nothing like the fluorescent-lit basement she'd scrubbed for years. It had high ceilings, sleek furniture, and a panoramic view of Lake Michigan that made her heart skip. On the desk sat a leather-bound folder. Inside, company credit card, onboarding documents, and a personal note from Harrington. Build something bigger than yourself. The industry's watching now. Make it count. She placed the nameplate on the edge of the desk and sat down slowly, letting the moment settle in. It had taken 6 years. 6 years of silent disrespect, unseen credentials, unanswered emails. But now, she wasn't just seen, she was leading. A knock interrupted her thoughts. It was Zoe from HR, the young analyst who had helped her gather the documents. We're starting the diversity audit next week, Zoe said, holding a tablet. But we've already found over 80 employees who are in positions way below their skill levels. Most of them are women of color. A few don't even have updated records in the system. Tanisha nodded. Let's fix that, one by one. As they walked through the new office layout together, Tanisha spotted a group photo pinned to a corkboard. Staff from various departments smiling under a Diversity Week banner. She noticed herself in the back, barely visible, half hidden behind a balloon stand. She removed the photo, then reached into her desk and grabbed a marker. Across the top, in bold black letters, she wrote, "Never invisible again." That weekend, Belmore Grand made national headlines, not just for firing executives or canceling contracts, but for naming the first black woman to lead global operations at a major luxury hotel chain. News anchors called her a whistleblower. Social media called her a hero. But Tanisha? She just wanted to get to work. Her first order of business, a scholarship fund for hotel employees' children, funded in part from the money previously spent on inflated translation contracts. The first recipient? The daughter of a janitor who dreamed of studying hospitality. When asked by a reporter what the moment meant to her, Tanisha didn't talk about revenge or vindication. She said simply, "We weren't asking to be handed anything. We were asking to be seen for who we are." If you felt even a fraction of what Tanisha must have felt walking into that office. If you've ever been overlooked, doubted, or told to know your place, comment the number 2 below. Just so I know you're still here, still listening, still believing. Because Tanisha's journey isn't over yet. The best is still coming. Part 5. Ripple Effect. 6 months after Tanisha Rivers walked out of the janitor's locker room for the last time, the Belmore Grand Hotel didn't just look different, it felt different. The change wasn't in the curtains or lobby music. It was in the way people spoke to the housekeeping staff. It was in the way HR no longer lost resumes. It was in the way no one assumed that a woman pushing a cart didn't have a degree. On the 28th floor, Tanisha's office was now the nerve center for something far greater than hotel operations. It was the heart of a quiet revolution. The program she created, Hidden Talent Initiative, had uncovered over 140 employees across the hotel's nationwide branches who possessed degrees, certifications, and multilingual skills. Many had spent years cleaning rooms, serving food, or folding towels, while their potential collected dust. Now, they were being promoted, trained, empowered. One former dishwasher was now a budget analyst. A room attendant from Atlanta, fluent in Portuguese and logistics, had become regional coordinator for South American events. And this wasn't just about internal growth. The Belmore Grand's customer satisfaction had risen 38% in international stays. Translation costs were down. Staff turnover dropped for the first time in 5 years. But more than numbers, it was the culture that shifted. And Tanisha wasn't finished. One cool October morning, she stood at the front of a full auditorium at the company's annual summit, hundreds of employees watching in person and thousands more tuning in remotely. Behind her, The screen displayed a simple quote in white lettering. Talent is everywhere. Opportunity is not. That ends today. She looked out across the crowd. Executives, housekeeping, front desk, maintenance, sitting shoulder to shoulder for the first time. I want to tell you about someone. She began. My mother. The room hushed. She worked as a hotel maid in Baton Rouge, had a college degree in sociology, but no one ever saw her as anything more than the help. She never got the chance to move beyond the laundry room. Tanisha paused, steadying her voice. She used to tell me, they'll try to make you feel invisible, baby, but your light isn't theirs to dim. A soft murmur of emotion passed through the audience. My mother passed before she ever got to see this. Tanisha continued, placing a hand on her heart. Before she knew that the daughter she sacrificed for would one day sit in a room like this. Not as a worker behind the curtain, but as someone who writes the script. Applause swelled, not polite, but powerful. I don't take this role to be admired. I take it to open doors. Doors that were welded shut for people like my mom. Like me, like so many of you. She gestured to the front row, where several newly promoted employees sat, former janitors, receptionists, servers, now team leads, translators, and even managers. Let's make this clear. This isn't charity. This is correction. This is what happens when we stop assuming potential based on titles, accents, or skin color. From the side of the stage, Douglas Harrington nodded proudly. Later that day, a new plaque was installed in the hotel's central atrium, where every guest and staff member passed by. In honor of the unseen, the underestimated, and the unstoppable, the future belongs to those who never stopped believing they deserved more. Beside it hung a photo. Tanisha, standing proudly with her new team, diverse, driven, determined, and just outside her office. A framed email hung on the wall. It was the first rejection she had ever received from Billionaire Grand. Dated 6 years ago, marked, position closed, not a cultural fit. Below it, in bold red ink, someone had written, turns out, she was the culture all along. Tanisha's story had started with silence and scrubbing floors. But it had grown into something no one expected, a movement. And in hotels across the country, other Tanishas were stepping forward, armed not just with resumes, but with the confidence that someone had gone before them, cleared a path, and left the light on. To be seen, and to see others. Tanisha's story isn't just about a promotion. It's about something far deeper, something every one of us craves. Whether we admit it or not, to be truly seen for who we are. In a world where job titles, uniforms, skin color, and zip codes often dictate how people treat you, Tanisha proved a powerful truth. Talent doesn't need permission, it needs a chance. She didn't wait for someone to open the door. She knocked louder. And when that door finally opened, she didn't just walk through it, she held it open for everyone who'd been left behind. This story carries real-life lessons we can all apply. Don't let someone else's expectations define your worth. If the system is broken, be brave enough to question it. And when you rise, bring others with you. Because real leadership isn't about being above others, it's about lifting others up. If you're out there right now, working hard, being overlooked, doubted, or underestimated, remember, you are not invisible. You are preparing. You are learning, growing, and building a strength that the world may not recognize yet, but it will. One day, your moment will come, and when it does, don't just prove them wrong, prove yourself right. If Tanisha's journey spoke to your heart, even a little, drop a yes in the comments. We want to know who's still here with us, who's still listening, still believing, and hey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Because more stories like this are coming. Stories of resilience, justice, and quiet power. Stories that just might remind you of you. You belong in this space. And your story might be the next one we tell.